Hi, everybody. I am really excited to be here this Friday night for my little cabin in the woods, Murphy's Law. We're doing this live with my author friend, Suzanne Kamata, who is signed in from Japan. Now it's 10 o'clock in the morning in Japan. So I am doing this every Friday for the month of April because it's National Poetry Month. But what I'm really excited about is I found out all these authors that I have been picking are also poets. And I just found out that Suzanne has been working on her poetry for 15 to 20 years. And this is her first read aloud for her poetry. So you all are in for a real treat. So I'm going to turn it over to speaker view. And I want you to recognize and welcome Suzanne Kamata. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Well, I've got my phone goes because we're doing poetry and I'm excited. I'm excited that you're doing this. So a lot of people will be watching this when we put it on the YouTube channel, but I'm turning it over to you. So go ahead.
Okay. So I've always thought of myself as a fiction writer. I always aspired to be a novelist and short story writer. And I've never thought of myself as a poet at all. So I feel I've always felt kind of imposter syndrome when it comes to poetry. But, in high school, I used to write, emo poetry in class and, and every now and then, something would strike me as a poetic moment. And I live in Japan. So sometimes, my husband and I will be gazing at cherry blossoms or Mount Fuji, and I'll say, let's make haiku, and then we do. So I love poetry. I love reading poetry, and I'm surrounded by poets. Like poetry is a big part of Japanese culture, actually, and just ordinary people write poems and send them into contests and get published in the newspaper. So poetry is a big part of Japanese culture. And as Kathy said, this is my first time ever to read my poetry to an audience, except for maybe a few students. So I'm just going to read a selection from over the years. So I've never had enough poems that really fit together to make a cohesive collection until my book came out just a couple of months ago. This is my poetry debut.
Beautiful cover. I love the cover.
I got to choose the photo. So it's by a South African photographer. I forgot her name. I'll tell you what it is. Named Vicky Sim. So she's on Instagram too. Yeah, so first of all, I'll just read a few poems and then I'll lead up to that and read a few more. And some of them are a little bit dark, so I'm just going to go kind of light, dark, light. Okay.
Yeah, you do it. Go ahead.
All right. So this first one has never been published, but it's called Mal de Pays, which means homesick in French. I have moved to the island of sun gods, of winter plums and gnarled pine. Maple leaves litter the lanes. In the cool breezes of fall, I sit on the veranda and sip green tea. Outside the window, roses bloom, wither, and die. Their petals fall like regret. In jeans and a baggy sweater, I fill my mind with words from far away. The shelves sag with books. I walk through the streets at 5 a.m. on whispery soles and sing to the sunrise.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, so this next one is from several years ago. I took a trip to Paris with my daughter, and she's a wheelchair user and she is deaf. So there were some challenges in our travels. And when you use a wheelchair, sometimes you have to go into the back entrance or go down, tunnels or things like that. So this is one of our experiences from our trip to Paris. And this one is called Night at the Theater. We've come for the pig mask poker, the rabbit costumes, the Japanese mime on stage. At the entrance, we are directed to an elevator that will lift us to accessible seating. My daughter boards in her wheelchair. I step in after. An usher reaches inside, pushes a button and says, "Get off," when the elevator stops, in French. We rise, doors whoosh, open to an empty, dark hall, a rock garden, a locked passageway. We wait, but no one comes. My daughter forms questions with her fingers. The hands on my watch indicate 10 minutes past the hour. The performance is now underway.
Wow. Wow. Now, do you speak French?
I do. I studied French in college. That was my minor. And I did foreign study in Avignon. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So how many languages do you speak?
I speak 3, and I can use Japanese Sign Language with my daughter, but hers is far more advanced than mine is. So we use a lot of.
So you actually, if you speak French and English and Japanese Sign Language, is there a difference between Japanese Sign Language and American Sign Language?
There is, because a lot of the signs in Japanese are based on kanji, the ideograms, and
so you speak 5.
I think that's 4, right?
Well,
English,
American Sign Language, French, Japanese.
No, I didn't know American Sign Language though. So.
Oh, okay.
Just a little, just like ABC.
That's still impressive. Okay, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I actually wrote like an essay version of that as well, the going to the theater and not knowing like where we were supposed to go, and I was like, my daughter's like, no, we have to wait here.
What happened?
Well, eventually I think I went back downstairs and I said, I think we were sent to the wrong place. And then someone brought us to where we were supposed to be, but they pushed the wrong button, right? We were just waiting.
How scary would that be?
Like waiting for Godot or something.
Oh my goodness. Okay. No more interruptions.
Okay. All right. So this next one, the next 2, they were published in a now defunct online literary magazine called Yarn. It was a literary magazine for young adults.
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, but it's no longer around. So these poems are gone. So the first one is called In Like a Lion. So this is a spring poem. Because March mornings were so blustery, I felt I had to hold on to everything with both hands and all of my strength, or I would lose the world. In my black rubber boots, with my mittens on a string, I wanted to walk up the hill, become taller, larger, big and broad enough to block the wind. I wanted to part the clouds with a swish of my arms, to be the king or queen of the universe. Okay, and the next one is The Sound That Afternoon. When the boy playing in the sandbox in the courtyard shuddered, hearing the sound of a gunshot echoing, he sensed something. When the woman who'd been hanging the laundry ran off in her apron, she saw something. When the young man's soul soared toward heaven, leaving his bullet-riddled body, he heard something. I think it was a mother crying. I think it was the sorrow of the world. All right, so this next one has, I think only like 2 or 3 people have read it at all. Because I wrote this in a poetry workshop that was put on by Christopher Simmons. This is his most recent book.
Love the cover.
I know, I love the cover too. I think I bought it for the cover.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, so the workshop was on writing like fantasy poetry or like incorporating fairy tales or something like that.
My thing. Okay.
Yeah, and also I lost my brother 3 years ago, so for a while I couldn't write anything at all. And then when I started to write again, like everything sort of kind of went back to him. So this poem is What the Witch Said. Bring me the eyelash of a beautiful baby. Sprinkle it with dewdrops from the petal of a spider lily. Powder it with ashes from the remains of a love letter sent from a foreign country. Then dance in a circle while reciting the names of your ancestors in reverse alphabetical order. Wait for thunder. Just before the next dawn, get down on your hands and knees and crawl into a cave. Keep going until the light disappears. You will see a sparkle, faint at first, then bursting into brilliance. It will seem almost unbearable, but keep looking. That is how you will find your brother.
That is wild. You know, I just finished a painting today called Spider Lilies.
Ooh,
I know.
you're gonna post it.
It gave me chills because I love that. It's a very different, and it's on glass. You'll have to
Wow.
look at it. That's
Yeah,
wild.
yeah. Your poems are very have like a fairy tale, or not your poems. Your paintings have like a fairy tale aspect to them. So this one is going to be published in a journal called Gingerbread House Online, and they're
I
gonna
know
have an
Gingerbread House.
illustration. Yeah, they're gonna have an illustration. So I think your painting might be ideal for that.
Well, I volunteered my I know that two of my friends that taught poetry and fairy tales were the head of the creative writing department at Stephen F. Austin were published in Gingerbread.
Oh,
So the McDermott,
yeah.
Christine and her husband McDermott, and they were fabulous. And they have all these connections. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the world is so small. Okay. All right. The next are hold on a second. The next are a little bit dark.
I like dark. I do.
So as you know, I live in Japan. So we're always very conscious of the World War, what happened in World War II. And, my husband likes to, he likes for our children to be aware of history. And so we've gone to Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And the next couple of poems they're kind of found poems, and they were taken from witnesses of the atomic bombing at Hiroshima. So there were essays, and I kind of compressed them and changed the words and kind of made it more poetic. But the facts and the quotations and the events are all true. So the first one is, I'll try not to cry. So the first one is Hiroshima School for Girls, August 6, 1945. The day began like any other. All of us lined up for morning drills beneath a clear sky. Mock wooden rifles propped against our shoulders. Suddenly, there was a sharp blue light like a camera flash. Teacher cried, "Down!" We tossed our guns aside, dropped to the ground, thumbs in ears, fingers over eyes to protect them from damage, just as we'd practiced. Okay, this next one is called 1.5 kilometers from ground zero. We gathered around the bridge and watched the buildings burn. Most of our homes were already ash. Sparks flew and sizzled. A row of storehouses burst open like roasted chestnuts. Their skins split. Thick mortared walls halved by heat. Slate roof tiles exploding in the air like fireworks. Beautiful, isn't it? Someone said. Everybody laughed. The dead came floating down the river.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'd like to read a few poems from my collection. So I think this is more of a chapbook, but it was published as a poet. The press, Kelsey Books, has an imprint for chapbooks and an imprint for poetry books, and they published it in the imprint for poetry books. So it's like a really short poetry book, but I had submitted it as a chapbook, so it's pretty short. But so the impetus for this book was two things. One, when my brother and I were kids, we had a really beautiful, lovely, adorable Cocker Spaniel named Gent. And one day we were at our cottage at a little lake in Michigan, and he would, just go run around while we were doing something else, and we were ready to go home, and we couldn't find him. So, we never knew what happened to him, and I'd like to think that he was, stolen and by someone who gave him a happy life. But we lost our dog, and that was really sad. And the other thing, the more serious thing that happened is that when I was in high school, I think my last year of high school, no, I was already in college actually, but this girl that I went to high school with was kidnapped by a psychopath, really. Her name was Sherry Smith, and she was kidnapped by this guy named Larry Gene Bell, and it was very sensational.
I don't think I've heard of this.
It was made into like a TV movie, and it's probably like on Crime Solvers, and it was very sensational because partly her sister was Miss South Carolina.
Oh my.
And he had an infatuation with the sister. And so this girl was in my homeroom, and I knew of her because she was, really beautiful and popular, and her family was very prominent. And I think she died because she was diabetic and she didn't have her insulin. I don't think she was, exactly killed by Larry Gene Bell, but
in a way, yeah.
Yeah. So this is something that happened long ago, but it's like, always like haunting me. And at the time I was like 19 or 20, and nobody knew exactly who it was. And I like to go out for walks by myself. And I was, this kind of young blonde girl. So it was kind of a scary time. And I've written about that in various ways, like essays and short stories. And then a few years ago, a bunch of my friends were like 4 people I know, they wrote novels in verse. So I thought I would try writing a story in verse.
Okay.
And so this is more of a story, but there are autobiographical elements to it. And it's kind of a coming of age story. So I dedicated it to Sherry and Deborah, who was another victim. Okay. And these poems were originally published in the online journal Yarn, which I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And the next month, it was the last issue of Yarn. And the next month, basically, they stopped publishing and it went offline. So not that many people had read it. So I thought it might be nice to publish it as a book. So I'll just read the first several poems. So the first one, Waiting. My brother Benjamin waits for Gent, our last Cocker Spaniel, to come home. Dad waits for his boss to give him a promotion. Mom waits for portents and signs. My boyfriend waits for me to say yes. I wait for the future, far away from here. The town waits for a missing girl to turn up and tell us it was all just a joke. Vigil. My little brother Benjamin fills the plastic dish only to later dump the untouched nuggets and fill the dish again. A ritual, a sacrificial offering to our lost Cocker Spaniel. He's gone door to door, promising mown lawns, washed windows, shined cars in exchange for information. No one helps. Everyone is more concerned about the disappearance of a young woman. Young women disappear with alarming regularity. 2 dead in the woods, naked. A 3rd still missing. Shira Bates. Shira. I was invited to her birthday party in kindergarten. I tried to wrap up my mother's engagement ring after snatching it from a crystal saucer while she washed dishes.
Oh no.
Suitable gift for such a princess of a girl, I thought.
Oh.
Mom caught me, spanked my behind, made me give Shira a Barbie with silky blonde hair, smooth skin, wearing the latest fashions like the birthday girl herself. I was more Raggedy Ann. Later, Shira and I drifted apart. She fell in with the cheerleaders, became star of the chorus, girlfriend to #1 hottie, Greg Sheely, found God, while I faded into gawkiness, good grades, and hid behind glasses and my long stringy hair, invisible me. Her voice. On the last day of school, a week before she went missing, Shira Bates sang with the chorus in the school cafeteria while I ate my blueberry yogurt. Her voice blended, then soared above. The others went silent, listening to her solo before jumping back in again. That girl could sing angels out of the sky, could get larks to land on her outstretched hands, I thought, with a kind of wonder, instead of the usual jealousy that I felt around Shira Bates. Monday afternoon. The phone rings. It's Brian. I know. Same time every day, 3 rings till Mom picks up. Brian at his summer job, calling to complain about the heat, his boss, how much he hates construction work. Brian wants law school, his father's practice, his life all planned out. 2-car garage, a Porsche for weekends, swimming pool, golf club, 2 kids, a boy and a girl, wife, maybe me. When he calls, he doesn't say, "How are you? What do you want? What shall we do tomorrow night?" He doesn't know what I eat for breakfast, or my favorite color, or what I want to be when I grow up. When he graduates, I'll be far away in the Peace Corps, or backpacking through Southeast Asian jungles, or teaching English in a refugee camp somewhere. Anywhere but here. What my mother sees. The images come to her like light, bright, flashing, blinding bolts of truth. A car overturned on the bypass. A severed limb. The unblinking eyes of a corpse. A barefoot child stumbling over shards of broken glass. What did you see this time? I ask my mother. You, she says, and shudders. She won't tell me the rest. 60%. Sometimes my mother is wrong. She predicted that Benjamin would break his arm the day before he fell out of his treehouse, but she couldn't see my SAT scores or what my homeroom teacher would write on my letter of recommendation for my college application. She doesn't know if I will get into Duke or Yale or Brown, so I cross my fingers and hope. The boyfriend. The first time I saw him, my knees melted. Butterflies flurried in my stomach. He asked me out, even though Melissa is thinner, and Laura is funnier, and Clara has blonde hair down to her waist. He asked me, plain old me. What did you see in me? I asked him one time. I like you, he said, because you seem just out of reach. And he held my hand tighter than before. Yellow ribbons. Everyone along our street has tied a yellow ribbon to their mailbox post. It means, Shira, come home safely. By day, volunteers hold hands, make a human chain, walk through field and forests. Dogs sniff her clothes, try to pick up her scent. At night, we gather, light candles, pray. Next year. He says, maybe we'll both go to the University of South Carolina and we'll tailgate at football games. Go Cox! And play Frisbee on the quad and head for one of those houses on stilts at the beach during spring break. And you'll join a sorority. And I'll join a frat and pin you. Like a butterfly? Maybe not. Locks. Dad adds deadbolts to all the doors that had double locks already. He has an alarm system installed. Talks about getting a new dog, not a cuddly family pet like Gent, but a barking, snarling beast, a pit bull, a German shepherd, an animal that will protect us. Our house has become a fortress. Indoors, we feel safe from lightning strikes, drunk drivers, killers of young women. But Dad, I say, Shira Bates wasn't in her house. She was outside at the edge of her driveway getting the mail. See, he says, it's better to stay inside. And I'll just read one more, okay, from this. Outside. Beyond the walls of our house is the forest of pine, other houses, churches, bars, schools, and the city. The University of South Carolina, the club where I go dancing, the restaurant where I tend the salad bar, the state capitol building with stars marking Civil War bullets, Confederate flag waving out front. Beyond that, other cities, Orangeburg, Charleston, and the ocean, teeming with dolphins, whales, sea turtles, schools of shimmery fish, darting among shipwrecks, mysteries beneath the waves that lap onto other shores. France, one of the places that I long to visit, that I will visit. Okay.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
How many poems are in this book?
It's 44 pages, and the poems start on page 11, so around 33 maybe.
Great.
So
We're wonderful. You know, I think the best writers are poets because they know how to distill all the words down to just the finest essence. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And, you know, Ron Rash was the first person that actually got me turned on to poetry because I picked his books and he said he wrote poetry. And I said, oh, I don't get poetry. Never did get it. And he goes, let me send you mine. And the first book he sent me was Eureka Mills. And Eureka is the name of my hometown. And I devoured that book. I thought, I've been reading the wrong poetry, but I love your poetry.
Thank you.
It's amazing to me that you can tell such a story in such, you know, when I tell a story, it's like I go down the rabbit hole. This reminds me of, you know, that's what Southerners do. We kind of get off track. But I'm fascinated by people who can do that. It's very beautiful. I'm really excited about reading your book.
Thank you.
Okay. But you have some more, right?
No, I have a few more because it's kind of dark, so I wanted to bring the light back up.
Okay.
And I promised you poems about cats.
I love cats. I love animals. I love all animals.
I do too. All right, so this next poem, this was published in Fall Lines, which is a project of the Jasper Project in Columbia, South Carolina, like spearheaded by Cynthia Boyder. And it's published in connection with the Richland County Public Library where I worked for a couple of years. And I was excited about this one because it was submitted anonymously, and that editor was the poet laureate of Columbia, Ed Madden. So I was so excited that he liked my poem and that he chose it. Yeah. So this one is like a persona poem. So it's called Laura Bragg, first woman director of an American museum, addresses the people of Charleston. When I first came to your city from Massachusetts, I found rot and wreckage, open sewers, vestiges of war, like scars after smallpox. Streets dirt or crushed oyster shells, cobblestones. Blacks lived in shabby huts behind your pastel mansions, as if freedom had never arrived. But beyond the seawall, the birds soared. Their calls, I could only imagine, death from childhood fever. I was intoxicated by the sense of the salt marsh, the pluff mud oozing between my patrician toes. The first time I saw a dolphin fin slice through water, my heart opened. My spirit lifted with egrets. You didn't know what you had, so I cataloged the names of the trees, the grasses that swished against my legs, wrote texts for your schools, packaged dioramas so that even Black children could know the nature and the history of your city. Most of the men were bones scattered on the battlefield. So how could you blame me for loving women? My belle prepared our meals, kept house so I could preserve your culture. I never liked cooking. I hired women when no one else did. Gave a job to Ned with the cleft palate. Welcomed Chinese students when others shunned them. See, here is a fan, a gift from Chia Mei Hu, now a permanent exhibit in your museum. I gathered up the earthen jars thrown by Dave the Potter, one-legged literate slave, assembled poets in my parlor to preserve Gullah for future generations. Money tight, I took a job up north, but only for a while. I gave them Georgia O'Keeffe, Helen T. Van's Fish Viewed from a Bathysphere, but Berkshire folks didn't understand modern art. They wanted Whistler. When I returned to Charleston, my job was gone. Belle, Ned, Chiamehu, all dead. Yet here, among wisteria and Spanish moss-draped oaks, is home. Long ago, I gave this city back to you, beloved and holy, and now I am your own.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
So Laura Bragg is a very interesting
You
person.
were just in South Carolina not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I was. Like, my parents live in just outside Columbia, so I spent a good bit of time there. So
How long is that flight?
it takes 24 hours, like door to door. But there's several flights, right? So I usually fly from maybe Tokyo to Atlanta, which is about 14 hours.
Wow.
So it's a schlep.
That's a long time to be sitting, I'm going to tell you.
Yes. And reading, but I read.
A lot of books.
Okay. All right. So now for the cat poems. Okay.
Yay. Okay.
So the first one I wrote this like it's meant to be text for a children's book, and it kind of goes on longer, but I cut it for submission too, and it was published in Ladybug.
Oh yeah, I know Ladybug.
Okay, so this is called The Kitten. A tissue. Oh, before I read it, I wanted to say where I came up with the idea for this. So I read a book called Crockett Johnson and Ruth Krauss, How an Unlikely Couple Found Love, Dodged the FBI, and Transformed Children's Literature. So by Phil Nell. And he wrote about how like a hole is too dig. You might know this book, A Hole is Too Dig, because you were involved in children's literature. So it was wildly popular, and it inspired lots of other similar books.
Wow,
So
I'm trying to think of it. I can't think of it. Go ahead.
It was published in 1952, so like
Okay.
before.
That was before I was born. Okay.
Right, before your time, but it was a classic, and
cool. I'll have to check it out.
yeah, so I checked it out of the library, and I thought I'd try to write something similar. So that's where the inspiration came from. Okay, so this is The Kitten. Okay. A tissue is for shredding. Curtains are for climbing. A ball is for chasing. A box is for hiding. A shadow is for stalking. A present is for bringing. A hand is for petting. A friend is for loving. So the present, I imagine a mouse. There is bringing mice. Okay.
That would be probably about the same time as Margaret Wise Brown.
Yes, exactly. Like she was one of their
Goodnight Moon is like, to me, one of the most beautiful. It's a poem, it
is, yeah. I had that memorized at one point because I just read it so many times.
Now I'm reading it to my grandson, and my grandson has my daughter's Goodnight, Moon Bunny. But yeah, I loved Margaret Wise Brown, but I'm gonna have to check out that book. You'll have to send
it. It's really fun. Yeah, I will. So like Ruth Krauss, like she
kind
was
of like what is the one in The Lovely Present? Mr. Rabbit in The Lovely Present. One of my favorite books ever when I was a child, and it came out in I think the 50s. So yeah, that was, it's very sophisticated writing for children.
Mm-hmm.
Children rise to the occasion. We don't have to dumb down for kids. Kids get, words. So right. That's the one thing I always loved about the children's books of my youth, because, if you didn't understand it, you would go to the dictionary and look it up, but I usually picked up the story. But go ahead, read your next one. I can't wait.
Okay, so this is the last poem that I prepared, but so this is another cat poem. Let me find it. Okay, so this one is called He's More of a Dog Person.
Mhm.
So it's about my husband. Okay. Get off the table, he shouts, and Cat leaps, escaping his swat, slinks against the wall in a feline sulk until the wild takes over and he's tearing down the hall back and forth, pausing only to rake the wallpaper with claws.
Mm.
Good for nothing bag of fleas. Cat flashes past, hides under a bed, creeps out to vomit on the brand new carpet. Okay, that's it. Back to the street where we found you. Finally exhausted, Cat curls up in a box, sleeps for hours until he scoops up the ball of fur, cradles him, kisses Cat gently on the nose.
Sweet.
I think the postman just came.
Does that happen every time the postman comes? That's awesome. Hi, Wandra. I love her poems. These are great. Thank you for joining us, Wandra.
Thank you.
So
Yes,
let me
thank you,
get it
Wandra.
back. I'm going to turn it back to so I can see all of you. Okay, there we go. So what I want to know, so you were raised in Michigan?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Michigan. And when I was 16, my dad's company moved to South Carolina. So it was like my last year of high school. And we moved down to South Carolina. I know.
Oh.
And then I went to the University of South Carolina. And after that, I worked for 1 year at the library. And then I wanted to have adventures, right? So I applied to different things like the Peace Corps and the JET program to teach English in Japan. And that's how I wound up here.
Oh my gosh, my daughter's friend from college is in Japan right now. I need it. She's a writer. And I need to figure out where she's at and get you guys connected because she worked at the library in Tyler, Texas before and then she also worked at a private school. But this is her second bout in Japan and she doesn't want to come back. She loves it over there. But
It's very
did
cushy.
you meet your husband in Japan?
Yeah, yes, yeah, through a mutual friend.
Wow.
So he's also a teacher. He's a PE teacher and he was a baseball coach, as you probably know.
Yeah, from your book, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. And you think you'll always be there?
It's hard to say, right? Always.
And you
But,
have how many children? You
I
have
have two. I have twins. So
Oh.
my son just graduated from college. He's just starting his first job in Tokyo. And
Wow.
he's actually developing into a writer as well, but he likes to write political commentary. He doesn't write poetry, but he's been publishing articles on a website. He's like the youngest writer on the website. So that's kind of exciting.
So then you have a daughter and they're twins?
Yes. And my daughter lives in Kyoto, and she's, as I mentioned before, she's deaf. And so she lives in sort of a residence for the deaf.
Yes.
And she's working, and she has, going out and going to movies and shopping and cherry blossom viewing and things like that.
Oh, that's great. Wow. So your kids are out of the nest.
They are, yeah.
Wow.
So just the cats and the husband.
And do you guys travel quite a bit?
Well, I travel more than my husband does, like because of baseball, he couldn't really do anything for 12 years, and now he's a weightlifting coach.
Oh.
So like in America, teachers have summer vacation off to do whatever they want, but here, like you have to go to work every day.
All year long. That's why
Um,
the kids are all so smart over there too, you know. So well, that's fascinating. And your family, do they come over?
they used to, but
Oh,
my parents are, like in their 80s now, and they have
oh,
various issues,
yeah.
so they can't really come anymore. So
Oh, well, I understand that. I'm 65 and I'm thinking 24 hours to get there. I think I'd have to stop and spend some time somewhere before I took the last leg.
yeah, you
Because
could stop in Hawaii. That's nice.
yes, and you know, it's really interesting you say that because when I went to the first time I went to Hawaii, I felt like I was the only American because it's such an international place to be. And there's so many from the Asian communities in Japan that go there for holiday that
Right.
I went and did the Pearl Harbor tour. And me and my two girlfriends, we were the only stateside. Everybody on our ship was from Japan. And it was very interesting because, you know, you're kind of wondering what they're thinking. You know, the histories are always told from the perspective of the victor, you know.
Right, exactly.
And so, but I've always been very aware of other, you know, cultures and people, and I really pay attention. Very, very polite, but it was a very somber boat ride to go over the Arizona and, you know, see all that. It was fascinating. But yeah, yeah, Hawaii's the halfway spot. Yeah,
Yeah, actually, my son went to, it wasn't an international school, but it was a school within like English immersion program.
uh-huh.
And to cap it all off, when they were in 6th grade, they went to Hawaii. So we had already, brought him to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then he went to see like the other side, and they did go to Pearl Harbor. So it was maybe confusing for him, but also,
It's very
interesting.
mind-boggling because when you go there, everything is exactly the way it was in the 1940s. You know,
Right.
there's big ships. You feel like you've almost time traveled. And it took a while to get out of that spell of that, you know, because we rented a car, a convertible Volkswagen thing, and we drove around the big, you know, Honolulu.
Mhm.
And it took a while to kind of get out of that, the spell of that. And but how interesting. And how old was he when he went?
I think he was 12. Yeah, around 12
That
or
had to
13.
left a big impression.
Yeah, but now he's very like he likes to write about like the intersection of Japanese and American politics and security. So he's not interested in, I mean, he's kind of interested in war, but he's a peaceful person, right? He's interested in preventing war.
Yeah, me
So,
too. I had
yeah.
a Japanese exchange student live with me for a short while through Rotary International,
Mhm,
Chisato,
mhm.
and it was a very learning experience because when she came to spend the year. She brought two suitcases and she brought no clothes, nothing.
She was going shopping or something. She planned to
She
go shopping.
one suitcase just was full of little chachi things to give away as she
Mhm.
went to different things, and the other one just books and things. But she didn't bring any clothes. And so the first thing we were going to go to a swim party, and she didn't have a bathing suit. So when we picked her up at the Dallas airport, the first thing we did is we went to the mall to buy her a bathing suit because she didn't have anything to swim in. And then I found out when I took her up to the school, all she had was the clothes she had on. She got off the plane. So then I had to take her shopping and buying her clothes. And she bought from the children's section. She loved Hello Kitty and, you know, all this stuff.
Right.
And I go, but these sizes are so tiny, you know, and she was tiny, but not that tiny. I said, let's go to the, junior girl section, but she wanted to buy the little kid clothes. And so that's what she bought.
Huh. I wonder if it's because she wore a uniform to school, like she just didn't have any clothes. She just wore the same thing every day.
She
Huh.
was not used to doing any household chores because they had somebody who did that.
Oh,
And
that's pretty
so,
unusual. No.
yeah, and I had to teach her how to iron and use the wash machine and the dishwasher, and she did not like that. Now, we had previously a boy stay with us from Germany, and he ended up being the kicker on the football team. And David was great because he embraced cooking. He liked to cook. He liked to do his own laundry and everything. So, and then we had one other boy that stayed with us for just a couple weekends from the Czech Republic. But I was thinking about sending my daughter because she wanted to do that, the Rotary Exchange Program. But after I had them come stay with me, I said, I don't think so. I just, I would be too worried. But my daughter's been and her husband have been everywhere now. They haven't been to Japan, but they're going to go visit their friend, the girl over there teaching. So I'll have to see if I can get you guys connected. You probably aren't anywhere near each other, but you never know.
Well, there's an annual Japan Writers Conference that she could go to. It takes place in October, and it's like a grassroots kind of thing.
She speaks Japanese. I mean,
no, it's in English, but it's all in English. But she might be interested in that, actually. Yeah.
She was going to go to Japan. COVID hit.
Oh.
And she couldn't go, and she gave up her apartment that she was living with these girls. Mm-hmm. And so she lived with my daughter and my husband for a while, and she was teaching my grandson Japanese. And they have Japanese books, and Lainey can speak some because she was learning along with him. I really think children need to learn when they're little.
Yeah, it's the easiest.
People that can speak more. I want to learn Hindi so bad, and I haven't found anybody who can teach me, and they don't really have anybody in the universities here. So I'll find somebody eventually. So I picked up some, but I learned a few words, but this is fascinating. Every time I have an author on and I hear the backstory, I'm always just, how did you get from this to there? I mean, and you've been in Japan for how many years?
30, going on 34.
You don't even look 34, does she, Wanda?
Thank you.
I mean, and how old are your children?
They're 22. I had them late though.
Can I ask you something, Suzanne?
Yeah.
What was it like to raise your children, mixed race children in Japan?
That's a really complicated question.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
I think basically I felt the whole time that I was failing as a mother because my bentos were never, my lunchboxes were never as beautiful as anyone else's. I was always getting scolded by my kids' teachers for not measuring up. So, but I think they turned out pretty well, So I think it was difficult for my kids because we live in a small town where there were very, very few other foreigners.
Right.
And your husband was a coach.
My husband was a coach, but he was never around because, baseball coaching was like a 12 hours a day, 7 days a week type of job. And so it was just me. And I would go to the school events by myself, and everybody else would be with their husband, the family. And so it was lonely. And I always felt like I was not measuring up, and I couldn't tell if people didn't shied away from me because there was a foreigner, because they didn't like me, things like that. So it was tough. Yeah.
So because Japan usually, traditionally they don't mix race. They don't, when they occupied Korea, they did not marry Korean women. Now,
Right.
quite a few Japanese women married Korean men, but Japanese men will not marry Korean women.
Really?
It's very,
Yeah.
very, very rare. It's like a very, very
Right,
teeny tiny
right. So
percentage of
they don't tend to
Japanese
marry
men.
outsiders. So were other children accepting of your children when they were growing up?
Well, I was worried. Well, both my husband was really worried about bullying, and I wanted our son, especially, well, my daughter is deaf, so it was more difficult, but I wanted our son to learn English so I could speak to him in my own language, right? So I sent him to a private school,
Mhm.
and I got a job so that I could pay for it, right? Like, so all of my money went to his school education, and there were some other there was another boy in his class. It was a small class, like around 20 kids, whose mother was from Australia and father was Japanese. So they had each other. And then in some other classes, there was a boy whose mother was Korean and father was Japanese. So there was a handful of kids like that. And the teachers were, relatively careful to make sure they weren't bullied. So at least, I think if there's at least one other person like you,
Yeah.
you can feel, that you're not so different. And I tried to take our, both children to America as often as possible, so that they could see there was something else out there, that even if things were hard for them, there were other places where people of different races lived together and they didn't have to always stay here.
How did they do on their trips? How did they do? Well, they got their grandparents, so they're loving. And
Well, my son has talked about this a bit since and written about it, and he's said that he felt he didn't really fit in anywhere. But he had enough language that he could communicate, and when he went to college, he chose a very international school, a small school in the northern part of Japan in Akita, where they taught all the classes in English. And most of the student body was either biracial or kids who had lived abroad. So he kind of found his tribe.
That's good.
And he felt really comfortable. But I think maybe growing up, he never really felt like he fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? If there isn't anything out there for him to read about it, then he needs to write it for others.
Right.
Because
but I also try to read lots of books about, about the both cultures and multicultural kids, and
we
but
try
yes,
to do that with my
right.
grandson now. We read I got him all these children's board books on teaching the celebrations of India and basic words, and my grandson loves Bollywood films. He likes dancing, the music, and the cars, because they got
Right.
lots of motorcycles and cars. And so my daughter jokes with me and she said, "You finally found somebody to watch those crazy Bollywood films with." And I said, "One day I'm going to take him to India. That's my goal." And but I don't want to just go to India. I want to go. I would love to go. I've been looking at some of your photographs of Japan. I went to the Japanese gardens in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it was the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. I must have took 1,000 pictures there, but they really have done it. I mean, it's landscaped, and it's just, I've never seen so many colors of green in my life as I did there. And we were there for quite a while because I was there for the National Ceramics. The school sent us as students to this, ceramic students to this thing. There were a handful of us that went. I went twice to this place, and coming back, I was on a bus or a tram or train or whatever. I met these two girls from a teacher and a young woman from China, and they were headed to a tea service, and they do the formal presentation of tea. And we got to talking to them, and they said, "Oh, you should come. We couldn't but we made friends. But it's fascinating to me to learn about these other cultures. You're really giving your children opportunities that my kids didn't get. Now they travel themselves, but I've learned so much from Wandra. She's sharing all these beautiful costumes and history of, and one of my best friends in Jefferson is half Korean. Her mother married a soldier, but he was from Oklahoma, and they had a boy and a son. But when she was young, they divorced, and the mom kept Mary and the dad kept the son. It's kind of sad, and her mother was killed tragically right before her high school graduation. And I wrote about it in my book. It's called My Other Book Family. So and I'm the first one that read to her son when he was born at the hospital. And people thought I was crazy. I go, you start when they're young. I started reading to my children before they were born. So when Brendan was born, I was at the hospital and I was reading him. I think it was Lily's Purple Plastic Purse story about when she got the baby brother. By Kevin Hinkes. But I think this is just fascinating. And at some point, I hope that you'll write a book about this experience, because I would like to read that. I mean, I love your poetry and I can't wait to read the book, but I love the stories behind the stories. I've learned from Antonina and Wandra and different people that Anju Gatani, all these people that I'm meeting from all these different countries, how you all end up here. And Wandra's in Texas. I mean, it's just fascinating. So come to Texas, Suzanne. You can come stay with me and my cats. And it's a long way from South Carolina, I will tell you. It takes 3 days to get out there, but it's a beautiful drive. So, and hopefully when this all lifts, we'll all get together. And we are working on Girlfriend Weekend 2023. So we're going to see what's going to happen. It's kind of still up in the air, but hopefully we'll know something before summer. So anyway, thank you for National Poetry Month, and show your cover of your book again so that everybody can see it. Where can they order that?
It's available in all the usual places,
Okay. I'll make sure that Mandy gets it up on our Pulpwood Queen bookshop waiting. Okay. And I love the cover. I think that's one of my favorite shades, but I love the cover and I thank you for sharing it. And I also want to talk to you some more about getting you involved with, the middle grade reader Cool Cats Club.
Yeah, I'd love that. I would love
that. Let's work on that too, because Mandy said, if you've got an author who wants to do a program, we'll get it in the queue too. Let's start this summer when we all have a little bit more time, even though you're busy. But
I'm not busy in the summer.
For joining us. Next week, just so everybody will know, next Friday, we have Rita Quillen. Rita wrote the book Wayland, and she's got the prequel coming out. She writes poetry, and she was discovered by or got endorsed by Ron Rash, who's one of my favorite Appalachian poets. He teaches Appalachian studies. And then the last month, Friday of the month, Mandy Haynes is going to share her poetry. So we've got 4 authors. Maybe next year we can do a few more, but just thank you for joining. Wandra, any news you want to share with us before we go? Anything happening in your world besides having that wonderful luncheon with those big hat ladies? That was awesome.
Well, I wanna thank Suzanne. Thank you for that wonderful review.
Yes,
it's going around. Yeah, and I didn't realize after you posted on Facebook, and I posted some in response, and Kim Davis, my publisher, sends me an email, says, have you seen this? Have you read this? I said, no. So I read the whole thing, and I realized that you've been communicating with her about the cover.
It's
Very-
amazing.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing, all of you that are sharing reviews of other authors' books. And I do take note of that generosity, because that's what our book club is all about. It's about all of us joining hands and working together and building bridges and sharing our stories, because the more we share our stories, you find out we're really not that different from each other. We all have the same basic wants and needs of fitting in. Nobody wants to be bullied. Everybody wants our children to be raised happy and have all the things that we can provide. But I think reading is the best gift you can ever give to anybody, is the love of reading and letting kids read what they want to read. I was a children's bookseller and buyer and manager for years, and parents would say, here's the list, the accelerator reader list. I want you to find these books. And I said, your child is in the 2nd grade. Why don't you go over to this section and let them pick out the books? But the problem with the accelerator's reading programs is they didn't have the new books on there. They just had older books that they've written tests up for. So I did not like that program. I think if kids are taught that reading is the best entertainment in the world, they'll read the rest of their lives. If they're forced to read stuff they don't want to read, because I could get a kid in my store and he doesn't like to read, and I go, okay, let me come with me, Bob, or whatever his name was. And I say, well, Bob, what do you like to do? He goes, I like to play soccer. I go, oh, you do? Well, I happen to know there's a series about a bunch of soccer playing boys. And I said, let's go look at those. And before you knew it, he grabbing 2 or 3 of them. You have to find the thing that they're interested in. I mean, I read comic books. Okay. There's not a whole lot of literary merit in a comic book other than you're reading to pictures. But I loved Millie the Model and Archie. Those were my 2 favorites, which, I didn't read Batman or any of those. Later on, I love the Tarzan ones, but look at me now, I read everything. I read so much. And I'm rereading right now one of my favorite books, because it's been years, decades since I've read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And it's set in Savannah. So if you haven't read this, you won't be able to put it down. But I read, and then I pulled out the other day, I have an original book of Tarzan. I read new stuff. I read old stuff, To Kill a Mockingbird. I read everything. And then I've got our next, month's book of the month just came out, like The Cicada Tree, The Lost Book of Eleanor Dale by Kimberly Brock. I read everything. So send me the books. Keep me posted on everything that's going. You can post on our official book club page. You cannot post on our blog that's set for the author of the week. So it's hard to get people to understand that, but it's important that they get featured, because everybody gets a turn. Everybody gets a turn. So next up, tomorrow night is our book and film club. And then we're back to Tuesday night book club. And thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Wanda, for coming. I'll download this. Oh, that looks like my Paul.
Yeah, blue eyes.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that looks just like my cat, Paul. He's got the beautiful blue eyes.
Yeah.
I have a black cat too, but
I had one just like that, and he was a rescue. He stole my rib at a company picnic, and they were going to kill him because he kept taking people's food. And I told the kids, I go, get that cat and put it in our car. And we took it home, and I had Paul till I moved here. And Paul was getting up in years, and Paul got attacked. It tore the fur off his neck, and I'd taken him to the vet, and he was recuperating, and then he disappeared. So I missed that. He was like a teddy bear. He was the best cat ever. Paul Newman named him for the, blue eyes. So adorable. Well, thank you for joining us, and I will get this posted as soon as I get it downloaded, and we'll put it up everywhere. And go to the blog site, because Alice Searley's going to be on there through the weekend, and then we'll get Kimberly Rock, who will be on board. So Tuesday Night Book Club. Thank you all so much. Keep the posts coming, and tag me. I'll put them up on the page if you don't have time to put them up. 22 years of featuring authors is a lot of mail. 150 messages for me this morning when I got up. And I can't keep up with all of them. So that's why I tell everybody, you can post once a day on the official International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys website. And I hope you do. Mandy or I will prove it and we'll get it posted. But thank you guys so much for joining me. You get bonus points doing this, and let's grow this book club. Oh, we're up. We had 435 new views on our channel, and Robert Waltney's was the biggest one last month, and then Judith Tittleman was one behind him. So and then the others were just like boom, 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 boom. 435 views, but we still only have 206 members, and we have thousands of book club members. So I'm trying to get everybody to subscribe. So tell everybody subscribe and watch our channel, and y'all have a great night, great spring, and we'll see you down the road. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good seeing you,
Suzanne.
Suzanne.
Bye, everybody. I love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.